In this class, we are going to explain about the branch expansion policies for banks in India. We know that after independence, the number of bank branches has increased enormously, and it has increased both in rural, urban, semi-urban area. Bank-wise, also the number of branches has increased. In this section, we are going to explain about the progress of branch expansion policies in India over the period. We know that in India, banks requires the permission from the Reserve Bank of India to start the branches as well as new banks. How this or what are the rules and regulations regarding the branch expansion policies of four banks are available, or what are the policies for the branch expansion policies of banks in India by the RBI are given in the following section. The statutory powers to grant license for opening branches of commercial bank in India were first. And the statutory powers to grant license for opening branches by commercial bank in India were first conferred on by the Reserve Bank of India by the Banking Companies Restriction of Branches Act 1946, which came into force on November 22nd, 1946. As the name shows, it is a Restriction of Branches Act. This act was designed primarily with a view to checking the indiscriminate growth of branch banking witnessed in India during the period of Second World War. After the Second World War, there was an enormous increase in the number of branches and number of bank branches, and this regulation was introduced to restrict the such mushroom growth in the number of bank branches in India. And the second one was it was incorporated in Section 23 of Banking Regulation Act 1949, in terms of which no banking company shall open a new place of business in India or change otherwise than within the same city, town or village the location of an existing place of business situated in India without the prior permission of the Reserve Bank of India. This is the second one. It is in accordance with the Banking Regulation Act 1949, Section 23 says that no banking company shall open a new place of business in India or change otherwise than within the same city, town or village the location of an existing place of business situated in India without the prior permission of the Reserve Bank of India. That means without the prior permission of Reserve Bank of India, banking companies shall not be banking companies cannot open new branches, or they cannot shift the branches from one place to another. This is according to the Banking Regulation Act 1949, Section 23. Another important provision is Section 23(2) of Banking Regulation Act lays down that before granting any permission under this section, Reserve Bank may be required to be satisfied by an inspection under Section 35 or otherwise. This is another section which deals with the banking branch licensing, etc. That is Section 32(2). Section 23(2) of the Banking Regulation Act also says that it must fulfill certain condition for the setting up of new branches. Then major objectives of these statutory provisions are the genesis of Section 23 of Banking Regulation Act 1949 is due to the two important reasons. First one, to control the indiscriminate opening of branches by banks. There was an indiscriminate opening of branches by the banks, and it first objective was to control it. Second one, to assist and promote economic growth by adoption of a vigorous and positive branch licensing policy designed to achieve the twin objective of mobilization of resource and also extension of credit facilities to the rural area and the development of banking habits among the people, particularly those in rural area. The second objective is to assist and promote economic growth by expansion of bank branches in the rural and by giving an incentive to improve the banking habits of the people in the rural area. Now, in the following section, we can see the various bank branch expansion policies that were adopted in India from time to time. During the second period of the Second World War, India witnessed indiscriminate growth of branch banking, and To restrict branch expansion, a restrictive policy was followed initially during the year 47 to 54. That is, in the initial year, there was a restrictive policy, and in 1964, liberal branch policy was introduced, and in 1962, banks were compelled to open branches in unbanked and banked centers in the ratio of 1:2. And during 62 to 65, a coordinated branch expansion was advised. And in 1968, social control measures were introduced with respect to the branch expansion policy. These are some of the important changes till 70. That is, during the period of Second World War, there was an enormous increase in the branches. Then after that, 47 to 54, we followed a restrictive policy. Then after that, till 1962, a liberal policy. And in 1962, banks were compelled to open branches in unbanked and banked centers in the ratio of 1:2. Then a coordinated approach for the expansion 62 to 65, and 68 social control measures were introduced. And as a result, in 1969, 14 major banks were nationalized. At that time, there were 6,955 branches of public sector banks in the country, with an average population per branch office for the country as a whole of 64,000. Per population branch was 64,000. And as a result of this, public sector banks were expected to coordinate amongst themselves and thereby avoid duplication of their efforts in the spread of banking facilities in underbanked area. And in 1970, RBI decided to issue licenses as and when the bank became eligible for opening offices at urban centers on the basis of ratio of one office in urban centers for every two offices opened after 1969 in rural and semi-urban. This was this policy they have adopted in 1970. Then in 1971, the requirements of bank to open the requisite number of offices in the rural bar semi-urban area to get an entitlement for opening urban office, including those at the metropolitan and port town, was relaxed so that more offices in metropolitan and port town might be opened. In 1971, there was a relaxation with respect to the criteria of 1:2, and this resulted in an enormous increase in the number of branches. And from January 1977 onwards, a bank had to open 4 offices in the unbanked rural centers to get an entitlement to open 1 office in metropolitan or port town. Then, during 1969 to 1980, there was a phenomenal increase of 19,855 branches, and the total number of public sector bank branches increased from 6,955 to 26,810. And during the period 1979 to 81, under branch expansion, states and districts with higher average population per branch office than the national average per population per branch office of 20,000 were identified, and district-wise branch expansion programs were drawn up in consultation with the state government, and banks were advised to open branches at the identified centers. That is, during this period, a branch expansion policy was adopted, and the banks were allowed to open branches in areas who are above the average population per branch office of the national level. During 1980 to 1919, there was a tremendous growth of bank branches, and the number of branches of public sector increased from 26,810 to 42. The number has almost doubled during this period. It's 10-year period. And after the adoption service area approach as a result of the lead bank scheme to the rural lending, under which each bank branch was expected to cover 15 to 25 villages, also ensured that banking needs of every village in the country was adequately taken care of, and the target of average population per bank office was 17,000 in rural and semi areas, more or less achieved by this period. By 1990, we have achieved this a target of 17,000 average population per bank office. In 2005, a new liberalized branch authorization policy was conveyed, and in accordance with a lot of changes were introduced in the branch banking policies of the rural and semi-urban centers. And as a result, The number this 2000 policy was applicable to the foreign branches also, foreign banks also. As a result, the number of branches increased during this period also. Thereafter there was changes in 2099, and in this we have introduced the changes in the branch expansion policies by taking into account the technological changes in the banking system also. Then in 2017, branch authorization policies, furthermore relaxations was introduced, and the restrictions on opening the branches in retirement centers was also introduced. And as a result of the 2000 policy, and RBI allowed the extension centers, satellite offices, part shifted branches, ultra small branches, and specialized branches. It is to be treated as bank outlet or part-time banking outlet. However, ATM, e-lobbies, cash deposit machine, etc. will be outside the purview of the banking outlet. This is a shift from the earlier definition of branch, which also included off-site ATMs. The increase in the number of branches in rural and rural, semi-urban, urban, metropolitan, and the total area is given, and the total all over the country is given here. And the number of branches increased in 1969 from 8,262 to in 2020 1,49,775. This increase we can see both in all areas. The increase in the number of branches of scheduled banks in India is given in this. Number of branches in accordance with the different banks are given here. Now the highest number of with the nationalized bank. The highest number of offices with the nationalized, higher number of branches are with the nationalized banks. This is about the branch expansion policies for India, that we can see over the period there was a tremendous increase in the number of branch offices in India. India adopted various policy changes also in accordance with the needs of the time.